In the UK, there are a few key sections that you have to include as part of your basics. First, we need your contact details. You need to start with those. You need your education on there, any work experience that you have so far, voluntary experience that you have so far, interests, positions of responsibility that you're particularly proud of, any awards and achievements that you want to shout about, and finally it finishes with references available on request. You can, if you want, include a personal profile. This is a shortened version of a cover letter, really, that answers 3 quick questions: who you are, what you're good at, and what you want. But it's very much a stylistic thing. You do not have to include a personal profile if you don't want, but I'll talk about those in a little bit. So if we start with your contact details, we've got 2 examples here on the screen in front of us, and hopefully you can see why the one on the left is so much better than the one on the right. The one on the right has a few problems. First of all, we don't need to start with curriculum vitae on a CV. It just takes up space, and it's pretty much assumed that that's what this document is. We would also never include your date of birth or a photograph of yourself on there. The reason is these can be used to discriminate, and in the UK we want to avoid that. Most recruiters would take these off anyway, so you wouldn't want to include them. And then you also want to look at things like your email address. Does it present a professional image? The one that this person on the right has used, not great. A point of interest, you might want to omit as well your address. The reason I say this is some employers, not all by any means, but some would discriminate on the basis of address. Not because they don't want anyone from Manchester, as an example, but let's say you're looking to relocate, you're applying to somewhere in Bristol, as an example. They might look at that and think, do we really want someone who has to relocate? That's a bit of a hassle. That's your decision, not theirs. So we'd always say maybe take your address out. You simply don't need it. They're not going to post anything to you, and it's just another thing that they might rule you out for. Now, I said at the top that you might want a personal profile, you might not. It's completely up to you. It's a stylistic choice. Some employers like them. It can be a really good way of tailoring your CV straight away. Some employers don't really look at them, so it's completely up to you. If you are going to use one, it needs to be specifically relevant to the job you're going for and the employer, if you can. Very short and punchy, no more than 2 sentences, and the more specific the better. So you'll see these 2 examples. The one on the top is quite weak. It talks about being hardworking, motivated. These are things that are expected, and I'm not getting a sense of what they're actually after from that paragraph, whereas the one on the bottom answers those 3 key questions: who they are, first year English literature student, what they're good at and what experience they have, customer facing skills, work in retail and charity sectors, and what they're looking for a spring internship in professional services. This is the level of tailoring that's expected from a good CV. You'd also include a section on your education, and this demonstrates 2 key rules of a CV. First, the further back in time you go, the less detail you want to give, and second, you want this in reverse chronological order, so that your most recent experience is the first one they see. So here you'll see in the degree we've got where it was, the dates, your expected result, and then a little bit of detail on some of your key modules and what you're particularly proud of, the things that you want an employer to know about. Then we move on to your A levels or equivalent, where they were, the date range, and here we only need the subject and your overall grade, which then goes to GCSEs, and even that is less detail. However many GCSEs you got, a grade range, and then including maths and English. We don't need any more detail than this. Your education is very much a starting point. It's the stuff on top of that that's going to make you stand out to an employer. Next, we come to possibly the most important section, the work experience and voluntary experience sections. These again will need to be in reverse chronological order, so that your most recent experience is first. And you need to pay attention to how you're writing these. You need to use active language with keywords and preferably bullet points. If you remember what I said in the previous section of this playlist, you're dealing with someone who is time poor, so you have to make sure that this is something that's easy to digest and it gets across the relevant points quickly. Now, if you do this, you might come across the problem where your most recent experience isn't directly relevant. I'll show you how this works in a minute, but what you can do is split this out into relevant work experience and then after that, other work experience. So your most relevant experience is the one that is the first one you see, is the one that stands out. Now put all this together and you'll come out with a document that looks somewhat like this. Start with your personal details, name, telephone number, then a personal profile if you've chosen to include that, then your education, and you'll see a little bit of detail in terms of their degree, and then after that the less detail they give. And what this person has done is split out their work experience, the next section, into relevant work experience, and then on the next page everything else. And you can see that this everything else includes any work experience or voluntary experience they've done that isn't directly relevant. And I'll be talking about how to write these sections in the next part of this playlist. This all brings us to the end of this section. If you can help grow the channel by liking and subscribing as usual, that would be really appreciated. And coming up in the next chapter, we'll be looking at the STAR technique and how you can use that in your CV to really evidence and demonstrate your skills and experience.